It's been almost 2 decades since we started our journey to educate and help you take action so you may better manage your financial future. Our goal is to help you accomplish your life's purpose. This podcast reveals financial tips, strategies, and insights that will help you to set your financial goals and guide you along the way. This is Managing Your Financial Future, brought to you by the advisors at Lucia Capital Group. Oh, thank you. Thank me. That was me. Did you recognize my voice, Professor Plum, on that intro there?
No, it's been too long. I don't recognize who you are.
Well, you'd have to be paying attention to what's going on this. Yeah, exactly. Managing Your Financial Future. It's nice to have you back in studio with me, Professor Plum. Normally, we don't do inside baseball stuff like that, but you've been the last year, maybe more, we've been doing this remotely.
Or we couldn't see each other.
We couldn't.
Now, we're still 6 feet apart, but we're in the same
room.
Vicinity.
That's right. See, I'm half vaccinated. If you want to do it, fine. But at least I know I'm safe. So I invited you, and you said, "Sure, what the heck? Why not? Who cares?"
If we haven't infected each other over the last 20 years, 25 years of doing this, we haven't completely killed each other over those 25 years. We'll be fine.
We'll be fine. We would have killed each other over
long ago.
That's just right. Over who knows what other issues. We've been doing this for a long, long time, and I do like to bring this up. We've been doing not this podcast, obviously. We've been doing this podcast for the last year and a half, but we go back doing radio and television. For people who are new to this, I'm Johnny Dean. I'm the host. I should say this. I'm just the host. I'm not the financial advisor. You're the financial advisor.
I'm the financial advisor. Certified financial planner.
Professional, sometimes they call you. Certified financial planner, professional, CFP, professional, whatever it is. So we complement each other nicely with an E, complement each other. We don't ever compliment each other. So, but we've been doing this for a long time. We did the radio and TV for
since
20.
93.
Yeah, well, really, since about 93. I started in 91 with the the other host.
93.
Yeah, and anyway, so it's been a long road, and it's nice to have you back in studio with us. A lot has happened. I was thinking when I first started this, when I just first started doing this stuff, I was 20. Well, I was 27. I was 20. I was still in my 20s. I was younger than I was the same age as my youngest daughter.
Is now,
right now. And it's a long time. And as I'm looking at where I am now, all this time has passed, and I start thinking, my goodness, I'm 57 now. My wife's 57. She's going to be 58. Later on this year. What the heck? It's not that big a deal. But we are obviously a lot closer to retirement age than we had considered.
It creeps up on you pretty quick.
Unbelievably quickly. I can't fathom this. I was walking past a sign. People put signs in their lawns for their kids who are graduating. They put the graduation
school,
year.
Yeah.
Right. And this one was for a freshman in high school. It said future freshman or future graduate class of 2025. I said 2025? I remember when 1980 seemed like a long way away. So it does creep up, and it does. But what this did for us was to get us thinking about our retirement, which is, for us, it's always been, for my wife and me, it's been right around age 65. That's about what we've decided. And we realized this is close. And for the last year, it's been a rough year for everybody.
Right.
My wife's been a teacher. She's been a principal for the last 4 years now. And it's just a lot of work. It's 7 days a week. And she has been asking me for the better part of the last 10 months, when
can I retire?
When can I retire? And it's always had a half joking. And I say, well, honey, are you about 65 yet? That's just always been the default answer. But over the last few months, really since the start of the year, we began to take this question a little bit more seriously because of just all the work and the stress involved. And it is a lot. It's 7 days a week for her. She doesn't get a break. There's no summer vacation and all that. So we started thinking about it. And I looked into it, and I was surprised at the fact that if she can't retire right now at age 57, almost 58, she can at least take a break. and not have to
change the style of her employment.
Change the style.
Take away some of the stress. Maybe you don't need to be making the big bucks. Maybe you've done a good job up until this point saving that the current money you've put aside will continue working for you for the next X number of years, but maybe you don't have to be feeding it quite as much, and you'll still be able to get there, but your wife will still be sane when you get there.
That's the key. And these are things that I think you have to think about when you're thinking about retiring. So that question did come up, and we said, well, what's the cost? I mean, you could stay in this job for another 8 school years.
And financially, that would be the
great.
best thing going.
Oh, absolutely. No question
But financially isn't the only thing we have to consider. I remember years back there was a study, I think it was from Boeing, that people that retired at 57, 58, 59 had a life expectancy of 82, 83, 84. People that worked all the way to 65 had a life expectancy of like 67. Those weren't the right numbers, but it was a significantly shorter period of time.
Yeah.
It took a toll on the body mentally and physically to continue in whatever jobs they were doing. That it took away quality of life.
Exactly. And as she looked at, she says, I got 8 more school years. And it was just the thought. And so we had long conversations, and we've discovered that at least for a year or two, she can
take a break.
She can take a break, and then if she wants to go back, she can do something else. She wants something where she's not thinking about this. She's not bringing her work home with her.
And you guys have done a decent job. Thankfully, you've been around people pushing you
to
save.
Oh, man.
And you've done a good job of building at least some portfolio that can continue working for you.
Yes.
Where you're, like I said, not feeding it every day, but it will still be there, still be working on its own. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have to be making the millions and millions as the teacher she was. Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
But it's not that she's ready to retire, but she can change her employment.
Yes.
Now, some people, we talk to them, am I ready to retire? First off, are you ready emotionally to retire? But also, are you ready financially? But there's 2 different ways to look at it. Some people look at retirement as, I don't ever want to have to lift a finger again. And other people look at it as, I want to know that I'm okay in doing whatever I want to do. It's more, we call it financial independence. And so she's getting to a point where she's going to need to work at least some amount of money, maybe not for the next year, but from, for another 5 or 6 years after this, just to cover, because right now it's too long of a period to fund out of the portfolio. We can't start drawing the portfolio down yet. But as long as we don't draw it down, we let it continue on its own for another 5, 6, 7 years. You get to this age where you can start your Social Security, she can start her pension and other things. The draw from the portfolio won't be as much. A, it'll be bigger. C, it will be less of a draw.
That's the point. And so we said, well, we got about a 7-year
window,
bridge, gap, whatever it is. 65 are okay because she's got great pensions. We both have pensions. We have Social Security. Right. So 65 on is fine, but it's getting to there. So it occurred to us that we could do this. And she could take a job in the next year, 2 years, 3 days a week.
She may find staying at home just isn't for her either.
Well, she's might.
I've never seen her be the type to sit still like that.
No, I haven't either. But we're going to find out. And if something falls in her lap, she wants to do it. So that's the point. So what this brings us to is I'm giving you our sort of current scenario where we're fortunately old enough and we have enough. I feel lucky that we've been able to save. The markets have been pretty kind to us and all that stuff, and we can use that. So the question comes up, I'm sure for you as an advisor, for somebody that says, how do I know when I can retire? We've brought up 2 things. It is the financial aspect, but it's also the mental health aspect.
How do I know that I can make it to retirement? I just can't handle going to work anymore. I need to find a way to retire soon. And so it's just an exercise of planning, and you have to take a look at what is going on in your financial life. And unfortunately, the answer for some people is you can't retire right now.
Yeah.
Or you have to dramatically change your lifestyle to be able to do it. Now, that may work for some people. And other people, they surprisingly find out. I mean, I've spoken with people, they come in initial interviews and say, why are you working? I mean, you talk about wanting to leave the job. You talk about that you're not happy, but you continue going back.
Yeah.
You've got more from what you're telling me you need to spend and what you've got already saved up and or available through pension, social at whatever time. You're going to have double the amount of money you've said you needed to spend. why are you working? I don't know any different. I didn't know that I could retire.
Yep.
And I've had that discussion with many people. Some of them break down and cry. You mean I don't have to go back?
Well, what a nice feeling it is. I didn't even look at it. I didn't know this. I thought our plan was to work until age 65, so it never occurred to me to look at it until we actually did look at it. Fortunately, I've been hanging out with you enough where I know what to.
You've got an idea.
I got an idea. Yeah. So we said, well, I bet this can at least work for a little while. So I felt good about that. But when somebody asks you that, how do I retire, or how can I make this happen before I had planned to make it happen? What are some of the things
can I make it happen before I had originally planned?
Yeah. So what do you look at when somebody says that?
Well, we look first off at obviously how old they are. I remember decades ago, when I was in my 30s, I was talking to a chiropractor, a friend, and they said, yeah, they wanted to retire at 40. And I said, oh. So
really?
I said, how much have you saved so far? Nothing. It's like,
and how old were they?
They were
35,
like 30, mid 30s, and they went. I go, I think that I know what you're making. You've told me that. It's impossible to build up a portfolio, and they wanted. This was a long time. They wanted $10,000 a month to retire. I said, it's not going to work. You can't unless you win the lottery. You cannot build your income if you saved every penny and didn't even have to pay taxes and didn't have anything. You didn't have to spend a dime of it. You can't build enough in 5 years to support 40, 50 years of distributions. And they weren't happy with what I was telling them, but unfortunately, they were thinking that they didn't do the math. And that's what we have to do. We've got to sit down and do some math. We've got to take a look at what incomes will you have coming in, if any. If you don't have them now, when might they start, Social Security and things like that? Mm-hmm. And how much money do you have already available to you? Or if you say, can I retire in 5 years? We just have to do some projections and take a look at what do you need, and most of it is, what do you need your portfolio to provide for you on an annual basis? Now, that number could change. If you wanted to retire at 58, you don't get Social Security yet, so your portfolio is going to have to provide a larger portion of, or all of the income, so until at least 62. But maybe you have a very long life expectancy and you want to defer taking until 70. Maybe you don't have any pensions, or maybe your pensions don't start until 65. So we look at the amount of money we have to draw, and then we do some math. I know it's a 4-letter word, and I was told there would be no math, but it's what happens, and we can get a reasonable, high-level view of, what, this is reasonable. I've had this discussion with several people over the last month, and one of them was saying, well, I've unfortunately had some issues with work, and we've had something happen, and I don't know that I can retire anymore. So, let's take a look at what you've got going on. And luckily, we found out that they could still do what they wanted to do at the timing that they wanted to do it. In fact, a little bit earlier. So,
do you run into people? You may run into people who say, "Yeah, I can make it at age 65, 66, something like that."
If I make it at 65, I know I'm golden.
Right.
But
so
I don't want to make it till 65.
But if I've got this window between age 60 and 65, or 59 or 58.
I'd like to not go back tomorrow.
Right. Exactly. So I have to dip into my portfolio between now and then. Right. Do you ever get somebody who says, look, it's going to cost me most of my portfolio, or a good chunk of my portfolio, to make it to those guarantees, but maybe when I get to age 65 and I have those guarantees, I won't need it? Does that ever happen?
It's rare, but I have seen it, yes. I've seen people who are putting off or don't have access to their pensions until 65, or that makes the most sense because they're highly discounted taking it early. And so the best option is to wait until 65 to take it, or some number, which is a few years in the future. So they draw their portfolios down fairly heavily, or waiting until age 70 to start taking Social Security. But once they get to 65, 70, once they get to the point where their pension is kicked in, their Social Security is kicked in, their spouse's Social Security is kicked in, I've seen it where people don't need a dime from their portfolio.
Well, and that's why I want to give some people maybe some hope who say, well, I'm going to have Social Security and pensions, but I can't possibly drain my
And we try not to drain it to zero because we still like to have something. But it's all a matter of what do you need to have happen. Now, some people, will look at it and say, given what you're spending right now, you're not going to be able to retire. I mean, unfortunately, it goes the other way as well. Mm-hmm. So, you wanted to retire now. Your plan was to retire now. You didn't think of it. You didn't have a plan. You just always thought you were going to retire at 65, and you're now 65, and now you're starting to look at it and saying, it's kind of like the way I talk. If I was known I was lived this long, I would have taken better care of myself.
Yeah, was it Mickey Mantle or
probably
whoever said that? Yeah.
Or now that I'm 65, I wish I would have taken a little bit better care of my finances up to and saved a little bit more. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that people getting ready to retire say. I wish I would have saved more. But they didn't say it when they were 30 because they weren't saving more. They were doing it. They had too many other things calling for their money. So what happens at that point? Well, you're not going to be able to build a big portfolio between now and tomorrow when you retire. So you're going to have to affect it on the income or the expense side. Are there expenses that are going to change? Or can you force an expense change? Unfortunately, that requires changing your lifestyle. And some people are willing to do that just to be able to retire. And other people are like, I'll stick it out. But it's all a matter of where are we today? Where do we want to be? And what is it going to be there to support that issue? Now,
you can't get Social Security retirement benefits before age 62.
Nope.
So that part of it discounted. Is out. There's the magical age of 59 and a half. Now, we should mention...
Well, that allows access without penalties.
Yeah, it does. Now, in our case, we're not 59 and a half yet. But I think we should mention, for those who don't know about this, that there is a rule, a post-age 55 rule. Explain that, if you would, for retirement accounts.
Well, for people that terminate employment from a specific employer, and if that specific employer has a retirement plan, 401k, a profit-sharing plan, 403b, 457, well, 457 is never have a 10% penalty, but a retirement plan through work. If you terminate employment in the year you reach age 55, then you can start taking distributions from that employer's retirement plan.
Or later. It could be
later. 55 or later.
Yeah.
Obviously, between 55 and 59 and a half is the key issue because normally we can't take money out of our IRAs until 59 and a half unless we do some kind of structured payment, which is kind of a pain. But if I have a 401k or a 450 or 403b, and let's say I needed $20,000 a year to supplement my spouse's continuing work or whatever the case may be, I could say, well, I'm going to leave, and I'm 55, and I just terminated employment. I can take money directly from that company's 401k without a penalty. Yes, it's still taxable. No way around that. But I won't have to pay a penalty. I don't have to wait until 59 and a half to get to that employer's, the company I terminated from in the year I turned 55 or later. I can have access to that money without a penalty.
Only from that company. Now, if you have a 403b or 401k from another previous employer
that I left way before I turned 55,
you cannot access that until you're 59 and a half. Right. Now, it doesn't matter why you leave the employer.
No.
Why?
No. All that matters is that you are no longer an employee of that particular firm or company or however you want to call it. So I can... like I said, if I needed $20,000, I could leave $100,000 in that plan and take $20,000 a year at 55, 56, all the way out to 60. And now I have access to every plan in my name. It's a way to bridge the gap. And we see this done quite often in planning where somebody has money at a 401k. They want to retire at 55, 56, 57. We'll leave a little money in the 401k so that we can take distributions without penalty, but they weren't big fans of the 401k. They wanted different investment. They could transfer the rest of it to any IRA they want, and they don't need to touch the IRA until 59 and a half because they've left enough money in their 401k to access, to bridge the gap from a penalty standpoint, from a planning penalty standpoint to get to other monies.
Which is, I suppose, why when you're thinking about things like if you ever wanted to roll your 401k to an IRA after you've left, you should probably think beforehand.
If you're leaving employment before 59 and a half, where are you going to get your money from until 59 and a half?
Because once it's in an IRA, if you put it in the IRA.
Right. It doesn't matter when you terminate it. You're not getting the money out of an IRA until 59 and a half without a penalty, without some exception, like the substantial equal payment plan. disability, unfortunately,
Yeah.
some healthcare issues, so most of the time it's pretty difficult to get money out of an IRA, whether you're working or not working, unless you're 59 and a half or older.
So what this shows is that there are ways to structure it that would, under normal circumstances, violate the 4% rule.
Yeah.
But
we see that a lot where somebody has a mortgage for the next 10 years, and so they've got a higher distribution right now, but then 5, 6, 10 years from now, whatever it is, the distribution is going to drop dramatically. So yeah, you can take out 6, 7, 8% for the next 5 years, and then when the mortgage drops off, your distribution from the portfolio drops off a lot. Maybe at that point, your Social Security and pensions are enough to cover your needs, and so you can go to a 0% distribution at that point.
Yeah, so that's why we talk about things, or you've talked about things being guidelines. We can violate certain guidelines if the circumstances call for it. Right,
but we do want to, if you're saying, can I retire, or when can I retire? There are ways to project this on a high level without getting into the weeds too much, and say, okay, you're going to be able to retire at such and such an age if you continue to save what you're doing now, or if you can increase what you're saving right now, or increasing what you're saving right now has a double effect in that obviously it increases your portfolio, but it also means that you're living on less of your income now, which means that you're getting used to a lower standard of living. I mean, it's one way to look at it, but
it's a really good way to look at it. And it was one of the factors in my wife's decision, because we looked at it and we said, well, how much can we live on? I said, well, you know what? We're saving a good portion of this, so we won't be saving it, but then again, we won't be spending it. So we may be able to work this out.
Right. So it's a matter of, and when I talk to people about the emotional side of getting ready for retirement, they've worked their entire lives. They think they have an idea of what they might want to do in retirement, but they really don't know. And they think they have an idea of what they might be spending in retirement, but they really don't know. You really don't until you get there. They say, well, think about what you're going to be spending. Start living on it now. Set yourself up to that budget to see if that's an acceptable budget. And in many cases, it's less than what they're spending now, so they can then save more. But they get used to what their retirement budget is before they retire. Now, the reality is, until you have the free time of retirement, and I know there's some people in retirement going, free time? What are you talking about?
I'm busier now than I ever was.
I don't know where I ever found time to work.
That's my folks, but anyway.
But the free time of not going to work. And I look at it this way. This might be a problem for me in that when I have free time, I'm dangerous. I have expensive hobbies. And when I work, I'm not doing the hobbies as much. But if I have all day to do the hobbies,
well, that's something that you got to be careful of as well.
I have to build that into my retirement plan.
Or don't do those hobbies, which is another thing you could consider, but you don't have to.
I'd like to. But all of these things go into the idea of, when can I retire? Can I retire now? And let's just take a look at it. But it just takes sitting down. And what I've found is one of the hardest things for people to wrap their arms around is, where am I right now? They've been working their whole lives. They've been putting money in the 401ks. Yeah. They've been saving Roths. They've been doing this, that, and the thing. They've never even looked at it as a whole picture. They've never looked at it as, well, I've got all this stuff, but what is it doing for me? And where is it? And how do I...
You talking about their savings?
The savings, investing, their Social Security, their pensions. They have no idea how to put it all together in a picture that says, this is what it's going to look like. And actually finding all the accounts that they've had over the years. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'll be talking to somebody, first or second, time we're meeting them, where are your assets? And the third time they come in, I got this IRA that I forgot about. Okay, it's $20,000, $30,000, whatever the number is.
Yeah.
As much as $100,000, $200,000. I forgot all about it.
That happened to us too, by the way.
But it can't hurt, obviously.
Right? Yeah.
But it's getting your arms around where you are now is one of the harder things to do for a lot of people, because they've been so busy focusing on working day to day, getting through the day-to-day activities, getting the kids through school, college, married, down the line, paying off the house, not paying off, whatever the case may be, that they forget that there's all these other things going on that are there to help them in the later years. Well, those later years are coming. And they're coming quickly.
They're coming quickly, and as I've found, they're just about here.
Let's make sure that those assets out there, A, are known, and B, are doing what they're supposed to be doing for you in a coordinated manner to get you there.
Because you may find out, well, shoot, I don't have to work another 5 years.
Yeah. Or I don't. what I've also seen is I don't have to work at this job that is overbearing and is killing me.
Yeah.
I may be able to back away. Instead of making the big bucks and saving a decent amount of money every year, I can back off and make, a reasonable number, have a lot less stress.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And enjoy my life and still be able to retire kind of when I want to. Now, what I've seen in that case, too, also is people end up working longer. The job that they were in to begin with all the stress, they wanted out, they think, oh, okay, maybe I can make it to 62, 63. But they back off at 58, 59, and they're having fun again. And they have purpose. They have, without being overbearing, overstressed, and they work until 68, 70.
You mean at a different job?
At a lower paying, less stressful job.
Oh, yeah.
And they work longer.
Oh.
It happens. They find that they like it.
Yeah, so it wasn't the actual just working, which isn't all that bad. It was the stress and the task of repeating every year.
Well, I used to work with a local government agency out near here, and a lot of the a lot of the individuals who work for that particular agency, they wanted to know when they could have a bad day at work and walk off and just tell them to kiss, whatever. Yeah. And so we would do the planning. We say, okay, at this point, your pension is up to a point where if you retired today, your pension would be this, your savings is this. You could retire today. And most of them, I don't think I remember talking to a single one of them that took that information and said, I'm done. But their attitude at work changed dramatically because now they know they're there on their choice.
Yep.
Not because they have to be there. And they enjoyed working again more. It took some of the stress away because they didn't have to be there. They knew that they could quit if they wanted to. They had enough money to retire, but they were enjoying the job that they started with when they enjoyed it at the beginning, that became a job over the years. Now they're enjoying it again. And
because
so they work longer.
If you know that you can
they were
go
financially
to work
independent
and decide, you know what, it's been real. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't want to deal with this anymore.
You got this country song all keyed up ready to take this job.
Exactly. And it does have a positive effect. But I think what you need to do is go over your
knowing when that date is.
That's right. You need to go over this with somebody. You do this stuff all the time.
Yes.
You talk to people. You know what questions to ask, I assume, of course, after all these years.
All leading into finding out what's going on.
And if retirement right now doesn't work, you could present different scenarios, I take it, and say, well, if you do this, maybe you can do that.
Downsize, move to a different state with lower cost of living.
Yeah, spend less, find out where maybe you don't have to spend as much over
here.
Take
your next paycheck and buy lottery tickets. No, I'm kidding.
No, but sell one of your cars if you're not working, maybe you don't need your other car. I know that's sacrilege.
One of my hobbies.
I know. But it's why you go over this stuff with a financial advisor. I'd like to talk sometime, not today because we're out of time, but I would like to talk about some of the benefits of having this. And I as somebody to at least go over your stuff. Some people don't want to pay for it. They want advice, but they don't want to pay for it. But it at least behooves you.
Well, they're also being told that they don't. If you read the financial press, you should never pay for advice. You could do this on your own.
Well, maybe we need to talk about that sometime. I mean, obviously, you as a financial advisor, you would have another...
and there are people that can do it on their own. But most people don't understand taxes to be able to do efficient tax planning, let alone efficient anything else.
Well, that may be a good topic next time. So for those of you folks who are wondering, when can I retire? Of course, the answer is always, it depends. But there may be a way to do it.
Yes.
If you're, as you said, if you're 40 years old and you want to retire at 42, but you haven't started saving, and...
Probably not going to help very much.
You need 10 grand a month. The answer is probably no. You can't retire. But there may be ways to do it, even if you're not age 59 and a half, even if you can't get your Social Security yet or you don't want to take it, even if you can't get your pensions yet, there are ways to bridge that gap.
If you've done something ahead of that, yes, there may be ways to get to that point.
Well, we may talk about that. I also want to talk in future shows about what happens when you meet with a financial advisor, because we get these questions all the time. We get questions from people who say, well, I've never met with an advisor. I don't even know what to expect. I don't know what to do. So this may be something we can talk about. If you'd like to find out more and answer that question, or at least get some answers to that question about whether You can retire. Can I retire now? Do I still need to work another 10 years, 5 years, whatever it is? Talk to Professor Rick Plum. You can get in touch with him at Lucia Capital Group, 800-644-1150, 800-644-1150. Any of the advisors can help out. I know, Professor, you're the Chief Financial Planning Officer for Lucia Capital Group, right?
I am, but there's great advisors that we have in this firm all across the U.S.
Well, they are, and you oversee all of the plans anyway, so everything kind of filters through you, but they'll be happy to meet with you. They'll be happy to talk with you. They can answer all the same questions and ask you some of the same questions that Professor Plum would. So you can do it at that phone number or luciacap.com. You can get all kinds of information there. And by the way, subscribe to this podcast. If you just found us and you don't know who we are, what we're all about, you can subscribe and listen to us over a year now, a year's worth of episodes. So a lot of good topics. All right, I thank you. We went a little over longer than we normally did, but I think this is important stuff. My thanks to Professor Rick Plum, Certified Financial Planner Professional, for him and for the entire gang at Lucia Capital Group. I appreciate you listening. As I said, subscribe to this podcast. I'm Johnny Dean, your host, and this is Managing Your Financial Future. We will talk to you again next time.
The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. To the extent that this material concerns tax matters, it is not intended or written to be used and cannot be used by a taxpayer for the purpose of avoiding penalties that may be imposed by law. Each taxpayer should seek independent advice from a tax professional based on his or her individual circumstances. You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. This material was gathered from sources believed to be reliable. However, its accuracy cannot be guaranteed. These materials are provided for general information and educational purposes based upon publicly available information from sources believed to be reliable. We cannot assure the accuracy or completeness of these materials. The information in these materials may change at any time and without notice. No client or prospective client should assume that the presentation or any component thereof serves as the receipt of or a substitute for personalized advice from LCG or from any other investment professional. The information provided is based on current laws, which are subject to change at any time. Lucia Capital Group is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency. Social Security rules can be complex. For more information about Social Security benefits, visit the SSA website at ssa.gov or call 800-772-1213 to speak with an SSA representative. IRA withdrawals will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may also be subject to a 10% penalty tax. Rick Plum is a registered representative with and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Lucia Capital Group, a separate entity from LPL Financial.